Wahi wa barakatuhu. Today, I welcome to all of you to the online webinar series of Al-Sadiq Institute of Islamic Banking, Finance and Takaful. Um, for this session, we are honored and feel privileged. We are honored and feel privileged to have Miss Zahra Jassim. She's a director of Professional Standards Development of AOFI, that she's with us, and inshallah it is our great opportunity to learn from his kind expertise, inshallah. First of all, I would like to introduce our trainer for this session, for today's session, Ms. Zahra Jassim. Zahra Jassim has led landmark initiatives during time with global organizations including EY, Thomson Reuters, and AOFI. She is a distinguished figure in Islamic finance, and of course she does not need a very long introduction, as she's very famous globally, and she has over 14 years of expertise gained in diversified sector of financial services. Currently, Ms. Zahra Jassim is serving as the Director of Professional Standards Development at the Accounting Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institution, as we know, AOFI. She's a pivotal member of the senior management team responsible for issuing governance, ethics, and auditing standards. Throughout her career, Zahra Jassim has achieved numerous milestones, including being recognized as one of the top 100 most influential women in Islamic finance. She is the first woman to join AOFI's Professional Standard Development Department and the senior management team. She has played a key role in issuing several standards and exposure drafts over the years, including the WAF governance standard. Her contribution extends to international conferences, podcasts, and articles and publication. She has also co-founded a training institute and led the launch of program for diploma in Islamic finance. Her extensive experience also involves market studies, strategic planning, Sharia governance guidelines, and co-authoring a chapter on sukuk structure, a very important topic of nowadays. With her exceptional skills in business strategies, project management, and communication, Ms. Zahra Jassim contributes to be a driving force in advancing the field of Islamic finance. As you heard, the shortest introduction of Ms. Zahra Jassim, inshallah, today we are honored and we feel privileged to have her on our board in this online webinar series presented by Al-Sadiq Institute of Islamic Banking, Finance and Takaful. Today, our topic of discussion is governance issues in Islamic finance. Inshallah, we will learn from Ms. Zahra Jassim. Over to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. I would like to start by thanking Al-Sadiq Institute for the kind invitation, for the kind introduction, and thanking all of you for allocating 60 minutes of your time for this webinar. And I hope that it will be a productive session. So let me start by sharing my presentation. I hope you can all see the screen. Okay. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I would like to start by taking you through the agenda of this webinar. First, 4 sections will be introductory sections. I will talk about understanding Sharia non-compliance risk, how to manage it, the difference between governance in Islamic and conventional banks, and the importance of having a robust governance framework. So all of these 4 sections are introductory sections that are meant to have a good flow of information until we reach section 5, which is the most important section in this presentation, where I will discuss 6 governance standards issued by AAOIFI. And you will understand how they can help us in minimizing the Sharia non-compliance risk. Sections 6 and 7 are very short sections. Again, we will talk about the role of ethics in managing the Sharia non-compliance risk. And I'll just bring to your attention the fact that we issued 6 exposure drought related to governance recently. In terms of time allocation, the first 4 sections, although they are 4 sections, but they should not take more than 15 to 20 minutes. And then the majority of the time will be allocated to section 5 about AAOIFI's comprehensive framework for governance. So Bismillah نبدأ. Understanding Sharia non-compliance risk. Let's look at the first slide about the different kind of risks which the conventional banks and Islamic banks as well are exposed to. So as you can see, the liquidity, market, credit, reputation, and operational risk, these 5 risks are common between conventional and Islamic. And then we have rate of return risk, displaced commercial risk, equity investment risk, and Sharia non-compliance risk. These are specific to the Islamic financial institutions. So I'll take you through each of these risks very briefly. What is liquidity risk? It is the risk related to how quickly you can turn an asset into cash, how quickly you can liquidate it. What is market risk? Market risk is a systematic risk. It's related to failure in markets. A good example is the 2008 financial crisis. What is the credit risk? Credit risk is the risk of default. Someone has certain amount of money that they cannot repay. What is the reputational risk? The reputational risk is the loss, the risk that the Islamic financial institution or the conventional financial institution will lose their reputation. Why? Because of certain events or circumstances. Risk number 5, operational risk. This is the risk that is related to failure in systems, operations, or related to people or human mistakes. So these 5 risks are, as I said, related and relevant to both conventional and Islamic financial institutions. What about the remaining risks? I'll start with the rate of return risk. In a mudaraba transaction, we have Rabb al-Mal and al-Mudarib. Rabb al-Mal is the provider of the capital, and the Mudarib is the one who managed the investment or the money. So if I say that there is a rate of return risk, it means that the depositor might not get the same return every year. There will be fluctuations in the return, or not even the return that it is promised to get. What is displaced commercial risk? It's the risk that this depositor, Rabb al-Mal, will place their fund in another institution. Why? Because of the fluctuations or the low return that this depositor or Rabb al-Mal got. What is equity investment risk? Again, this is also relevant to mudaraba transactions. It is the risk that the depositor or the Rabb al-Mal will lose their investments. If they invested 1,000 dinars, they might lose the whole amount. Why? Because Islamic finance is about sharing profit and losses. Now we remain with the Sharia non-compliance risk, which is the core of this presentation. What are we talking about? We need to define Sharia non-compliance risk for a start. And according to IFSB, it is defined as the risk of failure to comply with Sharia principles and rules. This is the straightforward definition of Sharia non-compliance risk. More specifically, we can say that there would be failure or that the terms, the conditions, and the related aspects agreed do not comply with Sharia principles and rules. And here we need to differentiate between 2 types of contracts. We have a contract that is batil and a contract that is fasid. A batil contract is, for example, a contract that includes riba. In this case, this is a batil contract. But if it is a fasid contract, for example, a murabaha or mudaraba transaction, that has certain mistakes in the terms and conditions, this is a fasid contract. Now, what is the scope of Sharia non-compliance risk? We have the primary risk and the secondary risk. The primary risk is related to the financial arrangements the contracts and the transactions. And that's why when we define external Sharia audit in AAOIFI, we say that it is an independent assurance engagements to do what? To ensure that the transactions, the financial arrangements, and the contracts are in line with Sharia principles and rules. So this is the primary scope of Sharia non-compliance risk. What about the secondary Sharia non-compliance risk? This is related to the reputation and ethics. Next slide. What are the implications of Sharia non-compliance risk? Let me give you an example of a case that happened, I think, 2 years back in 2020. It was Wahed Invest. There were an operational risk in terms of breaching the fiduciary responsibility and not complying with Sharia principles and rules, and therefore the reputation of Wahed Invest plus the reputation of also the Islamic finance industry was affected. So this is an operational implication. What about the regulatory non-compliance? The Security Exchange Commission, of course, declared Wahed Invest as not complying with the specific rules and regulations. And they had to pay, there was a financial implication, they had to pay $300,000 as a fine for this non-compliance and breaching the fiduciary responsibility and providing misleading information. Let's talk about major considerations that goes hand in hand with Sharia non-compliance risk. I'll start with the fiduciary responsibility, المسؤولية الاستئمانية. This is again very relevant to the contract of Mudaraba. Why? Because when me, as a depositor, as Rabb al-Mal, give my money, my investment to the Islamic financial institutions, the Islamic financial institution has a commitment. It gives me a commitment. They have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that my investment is being handled in the right way, with no negligence or misconduct. So this is the fiduciary responsibility. What about ethics and values? I'm sure that you are all familiar with the saying that if you lose money, you lose nothing. But if you lose health, you lose something. What about if you lose ethics? You lose everything. So ethics is very important concept, and having the proper set of ethics help in safeguarding the reputation also of the Islamic finance industry. And in the 6th section, I will talk about AAOIFI Code of Ethics for Islamic Finance Professionals to provide you with more details about ethics. What about compliance with Sharia principles and rules? It's important to know what is Sharia principles and rules. So this is the hierarchy where AAOIFI defines Sharia principles and rules. We always say, okay, the Islamic financial institution should abide by Sharia principles and rules. What are Sharia principles and rules? According to the definition of AAOIFI. This is important. This is according to AAOIFI. First, you need to follow Sharia standards of AAOIFI, then the regulations by the jurisdiction regulator, then the rulings of the Central Sharia Board, then the FASs or the financial accounting standards requirements or the standards that are issued by AAOIFI, and then the approvals by the Sharia Supervisory Board. Now, let me give you some notes regarding this slide or this hierarchy. First, when we had the public hearings related to the standards where this hierarchy was mentioned, we had certain inquiries saying that why AAOIFI Sharia standards are come first, why not the regulations by the respective jurisdiction? And the answer for this question is directly related to the mandate of AAOIFI. What is the mandate of AAOIFI? We are a not-for-profit organization that issues standards in 5 areas: accounting, governance, Sharia, auditing, and ethics. Why do we issue these standards? Because we want to harmonize the industry. We want to make sure that there is a standardization in the industry. That's why we have put the Sharia standard at the beginning. In case you're not familiar with what is Central Sharia Board, with what is Sharia Supervisory Board, no worries at all. In the upcoming sections, specifically section number 5, we will talk about standards specifically related to Sharia Supervisory Board and Central Sharia. This is the second note. The third note, it is very important to mention that currently in AAOIFI, We are working on a standard, on a governance standard called Determination and Application of Sharia Principles and Rules. And inshallah, by the help of Allah, we will issue the exposure draft during this quarter 1 of 2024. So I encourage you to read the exposure draft, to attend the public hearing related to this standard, which we explain, we have more explanation about our logic in having this hierarchy. I think this ends the first section, which is understanding Sharia non-compliance risk. We talked about different types of risk, and now it's time to know how to manage this risk. Let me give you an example to explain this, let's say, flowchart. In a murabaha transaction, there is a risk that the asset is sold before it is owned. And we know that one of the conditions, the Sharia conditions of having a valid transaction in murabaha, that you own it before you sell. If you will sell the car, you should own it before you sell it. This is a basic rule in Islamic finance. You're not allowed to sell what you don't own. So you identify this risk. What is the risk impact? You assess the risk, you assess the impact of if this risk happens. If this risk happens, the contract will be considered fasid. So you basically compare between the costs and benefits. Okay, if this happens, then I will have to donate certain amount to charity. So you make measures to mitigate or avoid the risk by having proper training for the staff, by having the proper systems, and then you report this risk. Now, again, when it comes to managing the Sharia non-compliance risk, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is the core risk or the core of this presentation. We can manage it at the institution level and at the transaction level. At the institution level, it means that it is at the level of the Islamic financial institution. While at the transaction level, it is related to the specific contracts, murabaha, mudaraba, salam, musharaka, and so on. So let me start about how to manage Sharia non-compliance risk at the institutional level. It will be done through Sharia governance, and I will talk about Sharia governance in details in the upcoming section, in which I will differentiate between corporate governance and Sharia governance, الحوكمة الشرعية وحوكمة الشركات. So at the institutional level, you have preventive controls and you have detective controls. Again, this is something that I will talk about in details, but let me just give you a heads up. There are preventive controls, and in AAOIFI we addressed these controls in Sharia compliance function standard, which is standard number 9, GS9, governance standard number 9, and this is one of the standards that I will explain in section 5. What about detective measures? Detective measures are related to the fact that, okay, after the transaction happened, how do we detect any mistakes or any Sharia non-compliances? This is done through internal Sharia audit and external Sharia audit. What about the transactional level? Again, we have preventive and we have detective measures, and I'll talk about them, inshallah, in more details. We have ethics and values because they are very important. And in case you have read AAOIFI Code of Ethics for Islamic Finance Professionals, the first line in the standard says, or in the code says, إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق, which says that ethics, or which state that ethics are very important in managing Sharia non-compliance risk. Again, this will provide more details. This is just, let's say, an overview. To manage Sharia non-compliance risk, you have the Sharia Supervisory Board, which is the core of the Sharia governance framework or organs. You have the Sharia compliance function. As I said, this is related to GS9, which I will explain. You have the internal audit function, which is related to GS11, governance standard number 11, which is a relatively longer standard than all of the 5 standards that I will explain. And we have external Sharia audit. Unfortunately, due to time constraint, I will not explain our auditing standard external Sharia audit, but inshallah in upcoming webinars I can do that. And you have by the regulator, of course, or the central bank, the Sharia compliance inspection, which is a mechanism by the regulators or the RSAs, the regulatory and supervisory authorities, to manage Sharia non-compliance risk. Again, there is a role that capacity building can play in managing Sharia non-compliance risk. We need to train the staff, we need to have proper IT systems, and we need to allocate proper funds. And as I said in the example for a murabaha transaction, you need to train the staff about the certain mistakes, about the certain Sharia issues. You need to have IT system capacity, and you need to allocate some money to make sure that you manage the risk properly. I think this is the slide, the last slide about the role of supervisors. The role of supervisors, or the RSAs, the regulatory and supervisory authorities, as we name them in AAOIFI. What is their role? They can support by establishing Sharia Central Sharia Board. They provide support for the individual Sharia Supervisory Board. And they can, as I said in the beginning, they can perform the inspections. So this ends the second section. How long did I take in explaining these two sections? MashaAllah. Okay, longer than I expected. Now coming to conventional and Islamic governance. Yani, I'm talking about corporate governance and Sharia governance. What is corporate governance? In simple words, it is how an institution, organization, or conventional bank are directed and controlled. This is the basic definition. Why? What are the key pillars of corporate governance? You have accountability, responsibility, transparency, and fairness. What is the meaning of accountability? By the way, these pillars in our standards, we refer to them a lot. Accountability is related to the fact that the management is accountable for their actions. What is the responsibility? That there is a responsibility toward the society. What is transparency? Having timely information. What is fairness? Fairness is about equal treatment. Why it is important to have corporate governance? We want to protect the stakeholders. We want to operate the organization and let it achieve its objective through efficient use of resources. And we want to allow the organization to competitively operate in the global market. So this is the importance of corporate governance. Key benefits, again, importance, impact, key benefits, they're all have similarities between them. So the institution can achieve their corporate aims. In the banking industry, it will be able to attract more depositors. Why? Because the depositors will have faith, will have, let's say, trust and confidence in the banking sector. For the shareholders, we will protect their sponsorship. For the regulators, we will strengthen the banking sector. And for the society, we want to maximize the social reward. This is again repetition that there is an impact on the corporation, on the society, and on the economy as well. Now we move on to Sharia governance. What is Sharia governance? This is the long, let's say, definition. It's basically arrangements that are intended to ensure effective oversight, responsibility, accountability of those charged with governance. Of course, Sharia governance framework is very important to assist in managing the risk. That's why I had two sections at the beginning to understand what is Sharia non-compliance risk and how to manage it. In case this definition was not clear for you, it's okay. I have another way for you to define Sharia non-compliance, to define Sharia governance. Let's start with general corporate governance. So the first component of Sharia governance is the general corporate governance, having board of directors, senior management committees. And as I said, it is about how an organization is directed and controlled. Addition to that, what is the additional component? There is the additional fiduciary responsibility. And I mentioned that earlier in the presentation about the fact that in a mudaraba contract, the Islamic financial institution have a fiduciary responsibility, مسؤولية استئمانية, to protect the interests of us as Rabb al-Mal or as a depositor. So this is an additional element. Again, Sharia compliance, and I have This is the important component, and I have defined it through the Sharia principles and rules hierarchy, the one with the 5 segments or components. So this completes Islamic Sharia governance or the Sharia governance model. What are the benefits of having good Sharia governance framework? We want to ensure Sharia compliance, and if you see the point number 3, it's about reducing the risks, and that's why I had an introduction about the risk. It will reduce different types of risk, not only the Sharia non-compliance risk, but also the reputation risk. So it's important to raise confidence in the public, or strengthen the public confidence and promote financial stability. This ends the 4th section. And I have now around 30 minutes to complete section 5 and the remaining sections 6 and 7 as well. So this is, as I said, now we come to the core of this presentation, AAOIFI governance or Sharia governance framework. These are our governance standards. We have more than 20 standards. And of course, I cannot explain all of these 20 standards today, but I chose 6. These 6 standards, 3 of them are issued by the Accounting and Governance Board before the reconstitution of the new board. In 2016, AAOIFI Governance and Ethics Board was formed. And now we are serving the 2nd term. The 2nd term is about to finish as well. So the first 3 standards, Sharia Supervisory Board or GS1, 2, and 5, these are issued by the earlier board. But for the Governance and Ethics Board, GS8, 9, and 11 are issued. So the first 3 standards are short standard. They will not take, inshallah, more than 15 minutes. Central Sharia Board and Sharia Compliance Function are little bit longer, but the more lengthy standard is the internal Sharia audit. So let me start now by, this is an introduction about the elements of Sharia governance. As I said, Sharia Supervisory Board, and I will introduce you to what is Sharia Supervisory Board, what does it mean, what are the rules related to the appointment of the members, dismissal of the members, and most importantly, the composition, the report. All of these, I will cover them in GS1, which is Sharia Supervisory Board appointment, composition, and report. Also, we will cover in GS5 the independence of Sharia Supervisory Board, and I will define what is the meaning of independence and differentiate between independence and objectivity, which are both important when it comes to Sharia Supervisory Board functions and operations. We have also the Sharia compliance function. As I said, this is GS9, and it is a preventive control. It's related to ongoing assessment, as compared to the detective controls, which are internal and external Sharia audit. Sharia non-compliance risk management, in some countries, it is required as a separate separate function. And lastly, Sharia compliance and fiduciary rating. Again, this is a new concept, but it is gaining momentum. So let me take 1 minute to tell you what we have done in this area in AAOIFI, in the area related to Sharia compliance and fiduciary ratings. We have issued GS10. GS10 is Sharia compliance and fiduciary rating for Islamic financial institutions. And we have issued also recently, actually, in 2023, in November, we issued GS17. GS meaning governance standard. This is how we refer to them. GS17, which is Sharia compliance and fiduciary rating for Sukuk and other Islamic finance instruments. So this is, again, part of our standards. Who is responsible for ensuring a proper Sharia governance and complying with Sharia principles and rules? Of course, the management, and who will supervise the management, and every individual in this organization or in the entity. and those charged with governance. You will this is a term or a definition that is commonly used in our standard, those charged with governance, yani the board. So again, they have the responsibility and to make sure that Sharia compliance and fiduciary rating is implemented in a certain institution or Islamic financial institution. The learning objectives, these learning objectives are related to the 6 standards that I will explain. So you will have an understanding of the Sharia Supervisory Board, its composition and appointment in GS1, and the independence will be explained in GS5. And then you will understand in GS2, governance standard number 2, the Sharia review process. How the Sharia Supervisory Board, after you understand what is Sharia Supervisory Board, you will know how the Sharia Supervisory Board conduct their assessment through planning, execution, and reporting and documentation. In GS8, governance standard number 8, I'm talking about 3 now, learning objective number 3, you will learn about the definition of Central Sharia Board, who appoint the Central Sharia Board, the composition, the functions. We have 3 functions related to the Central Sharia Board. You will learn about the fit and proper criteria for the members of this Central Sharia Board. So this is point or learning objective number 3 related to CSBs. What about Sharia compliance function? This is GS9. And we will learn about the function. We will learn about the fit and proper criteria for the head of the function. We will learn about the report. We will learn about the use of technology in supporting the Sharia compliance function and so on. And then the most lengthy standard is internal Sharia audit. And this will be covered, inshallah, in GS11. So without further ado, now it's time to start talking about Sharia Supervisory Board standard, which is GS1. So what is this is just an introduction. We will learn, as I said, about the appointment, the composition, and the report. Now, the first important thing, you need to understand what is Sharia Supervisory Board. Again, this is very important also for people who don't have Islamic finance background, who are not familiar with the corporate, with the Sharia governance framework. So Sharia Supervisory Board is an independent body of jurists, specialists, scholars who have knowledge in fiqh al-mu'amalat. What is their responsibility? Their responsibility is to direct, to review, and supervise the activities of the Islamic financial institution. And why do they do that? Because they want to ensure compliance, again, with what Sharia principles and rules, which I have defined previously. Important thing to note that the rulings of the Sharia Supervisory Board are binding on the Islamic financial institution. Let me talk now in more details. Who appoint the Sharia Supervisory Board members? They are appointed by the shareholders in the annual general meeting. Who dismiss them? Recommendation of the board of directors and subject to the approval of shareholders. It's right here. According to AAOIFI, in terms of the composition, we say that there should be at least 3 members on the Sharia Supervisory Board, and there is a possibility, we allow having expert members in different areas such as business, economics, accounting, and law, and so on. What about the report of the Sharia Supervisory Board? It will have the general sections, the title, the addressee, the introduction section, the scope, the opinion, and the date, of course, and the signature. The report of it's here very important to note the way that this sentence is phrased. The report of the Sharia Supervisory Board shall يعني must be published in the annual report. But the fatwas in the ruling are recommended to be published. This is just a brief overview about the content of the report. This actually concludes the three parts of the report, which are the introductory, the scope, and the opinion. This concludes Sharia Supervisory Board standard, which is GS1. I have put case studies, concept checkers. Again, due to time constraint, we will not go through them, but I can provide Al-Sadiq Institute with a copy of this presentation, and then you can verify or you check your understanding of the concepts. Let me check the time. Okay, we still have time, 25 minutes. GS2, which is about Sharia review. So now you know what is Sharia Supervisory Board, right? So how the institution, how the Sharia Supervisory Board conduct their review. We said that they will have to have a report. So this standard GS2 will assist in providing guidance in performing the Sharia review. So we start by what? By defining Sharia review. It is the examination of the extent of an IFI compliance in all of its activities with Sharia. Who's responsible for ensuring compliance? The SSB is responsible for forming an opinion and issuing the fatwas, but the main responsibility for compliance remains with the management of the institution. This is the process. Again, you have 3 steps. You should plan, you should execute, and then you document and publish the report. In the planning phase, you need to understand the operations of the IFI, right? The SSB members have to have an understanding, a good understanding actually, of the operations of the IFI. They should have the list of all the fatwas, all the rulings. And they should have an understanding of the products. And they will perform their review, their plan, based on having sample selection criteria, right? Having a sample size. And then in the execution part, they will review the contract, they will check if the transaction enters are in compliance with what the SSB already issued, already approved. They will review the other informations and circulars and minutes, and they will consult, this is important, they will consult with advisors like the external Sharia auditors as well. Then after this, the planning is done, the execution is done, we move on to the 3rd step, which is documentation. This conclusion will be documented in a report, and this report will be published. This is the concept checker for GS2. Now we move on to GS5, which is the independence of the Sharia Supervisory Board. Again, this is a short standard. It will not take much time. So it will provide the SSB with guidance related to independence, monitoring this independence, and then resolving any issues related to the independence. As I said, I will explain or differentiate between independence, الاستقلالية, and objectivity, الموضوعية. Independence, what is it? It's an attitude of mind which does not allow the viewpoints and conclusion of its possessor to become reliant or subordinate to the influences or the pressures of conflicting interests. So no pressures, no influences. This is how you ensure independence. What about objectivity? Objectivity is an independent mental attitude which the SSB should maintain in performing Sharia supervision. In here, I have to note an exposure draft that we have issued last year. Sorry, not last year. Last year was 2023. We issued it actually in 2022, which is called Exposure Draft of a Governance Standard on Sharia Decision-Making Process. Excuse me. And this exposure draft provide guidance to the SSB to make informed, objective objective decisions. They take objective decisions. They talk about different tendencies. If the Sharia scholar will take a decision, will issue a fatwa, what are the things that might affect his objectivity? So it's a long standard with chapters about maqasid Sharia. I urge you to read this standard, and if you need me, I can provide you with the link to this standard. It's available on our website. We have finished the public hearing process for this standard, but again, our public hearings are usually posted on YouTube. We conducted 3 public hearings in English and 1 in Arabic, so you can refer to our YouTube channel if you would like to know more about the Sharia decision-making process standard. What are other considerations when it comes to the independence of the SSB? The SSB members should continuously assess their relationship with the IFI. Why? Because they want, if there are situations that will impair their independence, it has to be resolved or reported. What is the basis of independence? Again, ethics is very important. How do you resolve issues of independence? First, you need to document the issue. You need to review the issue, and this is very important. C is very important. If it still exists after the review, the SSB member, the related SSB member, must resign. Who's responsible for the implementation of this short standard? And the responsibility, as I said before, lies with the management. This is part of the appendix. These are examples of possible independent impairment. Again, they are general. We're talking about financial involvement, personal and family relationship, having fees, performance-related bonuses, goods and services, actual or threatened litigation, long association, and so on. This actually ends. This is a case study, and there are concept checkers. But this ends the 3rd standard, which is the independence standard. Okay, 20 more minutes. I think it would be enough to finish the remaining standards. Central Sharia Board. It's very important to know that AAOIFI encourage, but not mandate, the creation of Central Sharia Board. What are the sections that we will learn in this standard? We will know about the key definitions. What is Central Sharia Board? Who appoint the Central Sharia Board? What is the form of remuneration, and who dismissed the Central Sharia Board? The terms of reference for their appointment, the composition, do they consist or include only Sharia scholars, or experts are also recommended to be included? We will learn about 3 functions of the Central Sharia Board: fatwas, regulations, and limited supervision. We will learn about different considerations, and most importantly, the independence. It's very important, or I think you might have noticed that the flow of this standard is similar to the flow of the SSB standard, right? We talked about the appointment, we talked about the independence. Here we will talk also about the fit and proper criteria, because when we wrote this standard in we started in 2016, but it was issued as final standard in 2018. When we started the writing of the standard, we based it on the same structure of the Sharia Supervisory Board standards that are issued by AAOIFI, which are GS1 and 5. Okay, Bismillah. We start with the definition. What is the CSB? A broad-level board that consists of what? As we said, scholars, specialized jurists, and experts. Experts also, we recommend that they are part of the Central Sharia Board. And we have fit and proper criteria for both the Sharia scholars and the experts. What is their responsibility? Their responsibility is to guide and advise on Sharia matters. And what is the purpose of this? Why do they do that? Excuse me. To provide uniformity and harmony in the product and practices. Again, this is the main mandate, the main scope of work of AAOIFI, which is to standardize the Islamic finance industry. Who appoint them? The appointing authority, يعني the regulator usually in the jurisdiction. In the second time appointment, it's important to take into consideration rotation requirements and self-evaluation requirements. In the last section of this presentation, I told you that I will give you an overview about the newly issued exposure draft, right? So let me give you just a heads up. In the issued exposure draft related to Sharia Supervisory Board, we have put a self-evaluation requirement and a sample to evaluate the scholars after the end of the term. Again, certain considerations, I'll take you through them. The nomination committee, what are we saying here? We're saying that the appointing authority should consider, should consider, it's not mandatory, and if necessary, forming a nomination committee. What is the responsibility of this nomination committee? Identifying suitable candidates. Why this committee is important? Because we want to provide more transparency. And if you remember, in the key pillars of corporate governance, when I explained them, transparency was one of them. So this, again, I'll just give you an additional information or note. The nomination committee requirement or consideration was not included in the exposure draft when we issued the Central Sharia Board standard in 2017. But then based on the comments from the public hearing, several comments were received encouraging having a nomination committee, and that's why we added it into the standard. And this shows you the importance of the public feedback or the stakeholders' feedback in shaping or in writing or in drafting and improving our standards. What about the remuneration? It can take different forms: on retainer basis, time basis, attendance basis, or a combination of all. The recommended tenure is 3 to 5 years, and there is a removal and termination in 2 cases: A, professional misconduct, or not attending the minimum number of meetings. If it was said to have 4 meetings in the year and 0 meetings were attended, this is a reason for the removal. Now, again, an important note: professional misconduct in the public hearings, because when we issue an exposure draft, we take it to the public, right? We take it to the public, and in the professional misconduct, we received comments saying that why you don't define the professional misconduct? How do you define it? And then we decided that we will not define it and we will leave it to the regulator of the jurisdiction. So these are the cases. What about the composition? The composition, we have a minimum of 5 members in case the CSP caters for a single industry, or 7 members if it caters for more than industry segments. So if it caters for capital market, takaful, and banking, we recommend having 7 members. What are the other considerations? The majority should be Sharia scholars. The chairman and vice chairman should be selected from among the scholars. And as I said, we recommend having also experts. FPC, or the fit and proper criteria, are prescribed, and I will take you through them. What about diversity? We encourage that scholars and experts are selected from within the country, and also globally acclaimed scholars. We recommend having representation of different schools of thoughts and different field of expertise. This is very important. What are the functions of the CSP? We said we encourage, right? We encourage, but we don't mandate the creation of CSPs. So the 3 functions are advisory and fatwa, regulations, oversight, and limited supervision. The main responsibility: issuing fatwas, approving sukuk structure, validating the product structure, providing advisory services, or guiding on specific issues. And the third point is very important. Generally, the role of the Central Sharia Board is passive, reactive. If the regulator tells them about a specific issue, but in 3 cases, this role will be proactive, which means that the Central Sharia Board will have to take the action when non-compliance is ignored by the regulator, when there is a negative market perception, or when the larger stakeholders' interest, the the interest is compromised. What about the regulations? How do they help the regulator? So it's open advisory nature, right? So they will help the regulator in adopting the Sharia standard and providing Sharia consultation, in reviewing and approving directives, in approving the code of ethics, and coordinating with other national boards and central Sharia boards. What about the third function, which is about oversight and limited supervision? This is about settling the differences between settling the differences of opinions or disagreement between the SSBs, supervising and guiding the inspection. We said that the role of the RSA, or the regulatory and supervisory authority, is what? Is to supervise, right? This is a measure that I have mentioned to minimize or to manage Sharia non-compliance risks. So they can support the Central Sharia Board, they can support in this process. And of course, they can hold, there should be coordination between the CSB and the SSBs in the countries, having periodic meetings. There are additional considerations when it comes to the CSB. And I think we have one more slide about the fit and proper criteria, and then we conclude. MashaAllah, I have 10 more minutes for 2 standards and 2 sections. Okay. Whenever I run out of time, please feel free to stop me. The decisions by the Central Sharia Board are done based on the majority of votes, and the secretariat can be either from the members, or it can be an officer from the appointing authority, or an individual specifically employed by the Islamic, by the appointing authority. Self-evaluation, I already mentioned that we have self-evaluation requirements also on the Sharia Supervisory Board standards that are issued. The responsibility of the appointing authority, of course, they are responsible to provide full operational independence of the SSB, having CPD, or continuous professional development program, succession planning, and provision of providing the required resources. Yes, this is the fit and proper criteria, and then we conclude. For a Sharia scholar and for an expert member to be part of the Central Sharia Board, what are the requirements? We have, of course, requirements related to academic qualifications, the related experience, and this is very important. Independence is important, good interest, good reputation in the market. These you can refer to them, inshallah, also when I share the presentation with Sadiq Institute. Okay. Chapter 9. Sorry, GS number 9. Can you advise, if I only have 7 minutes, then I will go to the last 2 sections about ethics and the newly issued governance or exposure drafts. Should I continue? It will take. Not sure. Okay, let me continue, and you feel free to stop me when I run out of time. I will stop. Sharia compliance function, or GS9. This is what we are going to learn in this section, or in this standard. We will talk about. I might skip some sections. I'll focus on the important sections: the functions, the organizational independence, and the reporting line. So this is the functions. This is important: the organizational independence and the reporting line. I mentioned already that it is a part of a preventive control, and the management and those charged with governance are responsible for ensuring Sharia compliance. This is about the key pillars in Sharia compliance function. The control environment is about setting the tone at top. The risk assessment, again, assessing the different types of risk. And that's why I had 2 sections about risk and how you control these risks. And you should communicate. There should be proper communication with the respective departments about the different risks. And then, of course, you have to do regular monitoring. The second slide explains those. This is by default. This is, I feel it's self-explanatory. I talked about having the proper training for the staff. Of course, if you're going to hire someone in the Sharia compliance function, they should have proper understanding of Sharia. If they don't, you have to train them. What about the head? Again, the head should be an experienced Sharia compliance professional. This is standard also in the appendix, have the list of the fit and proper criteria for the head of Sharia compliance function. When we hire the head, I think this is important to mention, it's also subject to the concurrence of the SSB. So the SSB should also approve the appointment of the head, but it is the main responsibility of the management. We just need the concurrence, the approval of the SSB. The functions, this is very important. They have to review and provide Sharia-related input for the ongoing processes, procedures, policies. They have to support the SSB. They have to review their documentations. They will have to develop Sharia compliance programs. They will have to provide their input to the business side. They have to coordinate with the internal Sharia audit. And one of the most important point is that they should be part of the management, but they should be independent from the business operations. This is important. They will also have, as I said, the staff should have understanding of fiqh al-mu'amalat, the fit of proper criteria for the head is already mentioned. They might consider, when they conduct their review, the Sharia supervisory function or the department, because function includes processes and people, right? It's more encompassed, more comprehensive term. The SCD may consider using different steps. They will have to develop manuals, toolkits, and transaction walkthroughs. There should be an escalation process. So there is an inventory of open issues. They need to develop an action plan to resolve issues, right? So if they identify issues, what will happen? They will have to resolve those issues. The compliance report, again, this can be used by the SSB before finalizing their annual Sharia report, and the content is a general content. You can read this. This concludes the GS9. I don't think I have time for GS11 because it's a lengthy standard, but let me give you just a brief overview about it. Why we have this section? Significant changes from the previous standard, because this superseded GS3. GS3 was the internal Sharia review. We superseded by GS11, which was issued, I believe, in 2019. So these are the significant changes. Again, a good read for you. This is important. This is, and I cannot conclude the presentation without making sure that you understand the difference between internal Sharia audit and Sharia compliance function. Sharia compliance function, I have explained all the standards, so you know that it is a preventive technique and the responsibility lies with the management. While the internal Sharia audit is a detective technique and the responsibility, the reporting is to the audit committee. This is important. I don't think I have time for this. What are the possible options for forming or establishing an internal Sharia audit function? It can be a separate department. This is the default option. This is the preferred option by AAOIFI. Or it can be a unit, يعني a part of the internal audit function, or you can outsource it. It's very important to mention, Sharia compliance function, you cannot outsource it. Internal Sharia audit, there is a possibility for outsourcing. The next slide talk about the conditions. When you can establish it as part of the internal audit function, when you can outsource it. Again, see the reporting line. This is what I've told you that is very important. The reporting line is to the audit committee, the staffing and the CPD, the Continuous Professional Development Program. This is very important and self-explanatory, right? The staff in the audit department, they should have proper understanding of the operations and the terms and the fiqh, al-muamalat. What about the charter and the manual? The charter is provide general information. The manual provide more detailed information. I'm running out of time, so just I think I will go through. I'll introduce you to two concepts important when it comes to audit: materiality, and residual risk. This is related to here, the process flow, materiality and residual risk. What is materiality? The significance of the matter. So it's important when you take the samples, you take into consideration the materiality, the significance of each matter. And assessing the residual risk. The residual risk, how should I explain it? A basic example is that, okay, when you go in the car, you have the risk of having, may Allah protect all of you and bless you, you have the risk of having car accident, right? So what do? You have the seat belt, there are other precautions, but this does not prevent. It doesn't mean that 100% you will not get, there is still a possibility and the probability. So this is the residual risk, the risk that remains after you take the precautions. The fit and proper criteria for the head is also mentioned. There will have to be a report. This is the head of the internal Sharia audit department, the specific fit and proper criteria. And as I said, when you outsource it, when you outsource the department, you have to take into consideration a certain, let's say, certain requirements. You should have regulatory approval. It should be approved, this firm, by the SSB, and so on. There are conditions. This concludes, I ran out of time, of course, but okay. 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, I will conclude, inshallah. This is the concept checker. Again, I urge you and I encourage you to look at the concept checkers when we send you this presentation. Role of ethics in managing Sharia non-compliance risk. We said when we talked about the scope of risk, we talked about the primary and secondary risks, right? The secondary risks are related to ethics and reputation. So in AAOIFI, we issued a code of ethics for the individuals, for the professionals. IFSB, which is Islamic Financial Services Board based in Malaysia, they issued a code of ethics at the institutional level. What is the objective of the code? You can read them, but see the most important thing, look at D. Reduce the operational risk of the IFI. Why did I have 2 sections about the risk? Because this is the core of governance, right? We want to reduce the operational risk, the reputation risk, and enhance the stakeholder confidence. When you read this is the Code of Ethics for Islamic Finance Professional. Is a 70-page document. Again, it's available on our website. And if you need the link, and if you need to contact me, please feel free to do so. I'll send you the link. It is based on Adl and Ihsan equation. And in the first, as I mentioned at the beginning, the first line, إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق. This is the Adl and Ihsan equation. Having the right intention, having the right niyyah, through what? Through taqwa and tawakkul. Doing the right thing through tawakkul. Do it in the right manner through having the quwwah. You engage with others positively through tawasaw bil-haq and tawasaw bil-sabr. So the Code of Ethics in 70 pages has different violations, right? Different violations. Examples are what is a violation for ethics? Lying, cheating, bribes, and so on. And it has different virtue like sidq, amana, tawakkul, taqwa, and so on. This concludes my presentation. I just want to give you a heads up. In December 2023, we have issued 6 newly exposure drafts covering these 6 areas. We will hold a public hearing in Arabic and in English. Stay tuned and try to follow our website, our social media, in order to, inshallah, join us in these public hearings, and you'll be able to understand more about ethics, more about governance and our framework. So thank you so much. I took more time, but thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you, Al-Sadiq Institute, for this opportunity. And over to you, Morgan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. First of all, I would like to thank you that we took your time and you well defined all the standards. And it is for the first time that in such a short span of time, we studied many governance standards. So it was our um, good for us that we covered so many topics starting from Sharia non-compliance risk, its classification as a primary and secondary, the categories where the Sharia non-compliance risk arises in liquidity, in marketing, in credit, in product as well, and what will be the implications of SNCR. Um, you also talked about the Sharia governance framework, why it is important, and what are the composition of Sharia governance framework, which includes the basic corporate governance, fiduciary responsibility, Sharia responsibility, and you also talk about the risk stages as well, and the need of Sharia governance framework.
Thank you.
Apart from that, we what we did. I should not use the word we, but we learned from your kind excellency many governance standards such as Sharia compliance framework, internal Sharia audit, external Sharia audit, Sharia supervisory board, Sharia central Sharia boards, their review reports, and the ethics, and so many things I cannot describe in one sentence. So it was our honor to have you on board, and you can see in comment section as well that many of our
Yes.
participants are saying that it was a wonderful opportunity. But as you know that we did not want to conclude the session, but it was the time who intersect us. So inshallah, I believe that this is not the first time we are benefiting ourselves from you. Inshallah, we will start this is the first episode, inshallah, and inshallah we will take your time. But now we want to have some questions in short time. So we would not like to take your more time. So if any participant has any question, kindly raise your hands. Thank you. Inshallah, we will not take so many questions, but instead two or three. So I think so
Yes.
many topics has been described in detail, and the rest we will work by ourselves. So Mr. Ahmed Danish, you can unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, Salam alaikum. A nice presentation by the ma'am. My question for you is that, Alhamdulillah, the way you have described the presentation and the way the processes that have been defined were very informative. My particular question is regarding the process of the fiqhi part of it. As you know that many participants in this presentation and the institute as well is from Fiqh Jafariya. So how can we as well be confident that the processes that are implemented in Sharia compliance are also compliant with the Fiqh Jafariya? So if you could just highlight that part, because as you spoke about diversity as well, so is it ensured that these policies and these financial modules that you are offering are compliant with Fiqh Jafariya, or if you could explain that? Yeah, thank you.
Inshallah. You're most welcome. Let me start by noting some important points. I'll give you an example of Bahrain Central Sharia Board. We have representation from Ja'fari School. Sheikh Al-Asfour is there. This is one. Two, the main differences between the Sunni and the Ja'fari school of thought, in my humble opinion, there are no major differences. We agree on most of the prohibitions of riba, prohibitions of gharar, prohibition of dealing with qimar. But in some countries, actually, I am like you, learning about this. We have received inquiries from Iraq about the differences, and we are working on it. Currently now, I don't have the full set of differences, but I can share maybe with you the knowledge that we have from our brothers and sisters in Iraq, because this is something that they have as well. Their banks have Ja'fari and Sunni, both of them. So I don't know if I have answered your question, but in AAOIFI also we have considerations for this. So inshallah, that's it.
Yes, another
Any more questions?
Mr. Sadaqatullah
You're
Khan
most
or
welcome.
the hero, please kindly unmute yourself. You can ask question. Basically, as a participant, I have also a question. Not a question,
Okay.
but you can say that
Comment?
my opinion that first of all, I would like to say that we were talking about the governance standard. It is one of the keys of Islamic finance. When we claim that our institution is Sharia compliant, it must be Sharia compliant at each and all stages, whether it's a product or services, as Ayatollah Shahid Baqir Sadr has also mentioned in his book Al Bank La Rabawi fil Islam. It is one of the first book regarding Islamic banking. He said three prerequisites must be there before the initiation of Islamic banking. First, it must be Sharia compliant at each stage. Second, it must remain bank, must not be converted into the trading institute. And third, it must be feasible, and it has as much as capacity as it may survive in that society which is full of riba and everything. So my question is, as you were talking about the central Sharia board, IOFI also recommends about the diversification. When we say the diversification, especially regarding the Islamic finance, it's a topic of fiqh. So we are not talking about the diversification of beliefs or mukhtalif al-fiqh al-mukhtalifa, but we are talking about the different school of thoughts. So we can see that AOFI itself has Ayatollah Sheikh Muhammad Ali Taskhiri. He was a AOFI Sharia board member, and from Fiqh Jafriya, Sheikh Mohsen Usfour was also there. But nowadays, or you can say after 2012, we do not see any representation. It is really necessary because we are doing Islamic finance for a consumer. And a consumer, when we say riba is haram because he's a Muslim. So one, he's a Muslim, he's subsequently a Ahl Sunnat or Ahl Tashayyu. So as per AOFI, which itself does not discriminate in its and also recommend to have a diversified Sharia board, must have, in my humble opinion, must have an you can say representation from fiqh school of thought, because we have two main classification. One is Shia and second is Ahl Sunnat. And in Ahl Sunnat we have four major school of thoughts: Fiqh Hanbali, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i. First, second, as you mentioned that as per the AOFI recommendations, it is good to have a diversification at central Sharia board level, but not at a Sharia supervisory board. Most of the time, we do not go to the central Sharia board. Whatever the problem arises in the institution, it goes to the Sharia supervisory board of the bank. So it also must be recommended at the Sharia supervisory board level as well to have that diversification. For example, in Pakistan, I work in ABC Bank. It has a Sharia board, and we have almost you can say that 100 million consumers of that bank. So in 100 million consumer, if it is recommended to have a diversified Sharia board, because most of the time we do not go to the central Sharia board, we have our separate Sharia board. So it will be also good to create, you can say, a trust of consumer in Islamic finance as well.
Thank you, Maulana. In the last slide, I mentioned about the six newly issued exposure draft, right? And you will have public hearings about them. I urge you to attend, and also, I will of course transfer this your comment to the management, and it is being considered. This is something that I can say there is no final decision right now, but it is being considered. And I also, as I said, encourage you to attend the public hearing and raise this issue or raise this comment.
Inshallah, indeed. Mr. Sadaqatullah or Mr. The Hero, if you have question, you can ask quickly, please. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is about the Sharia compliance in the Takaful Institute or the Takaful. Is
Companies?
it the same? Yes, the Takaful company, please. Thank you. Is it the same configuration that we have in the bank sector and the Takaful company?
Yes. In our standards, in all of our standards, we define what is an Islamic financial institution. And when we define it, it includes the Takaful and it includes windows as well. So by default, the Sharia compliance function standard GS9 is also applicable to the Takaful institutions or Takaful companies. If anyone else also have a question?
Thank you.
Mr. Sadaqatullah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Zahra and Maulana Mazhar Sahib. Thank you for your excellent presentation on the subject, and we highly appreciate your efforts in providing great learning to all of us on the subject. And thanks to Maulana Sayyid Mazhar Sahib also for arranging this webinar and conducting. May Allah give you more strength. My just one simple question is, what is the impact on IFIs for not adopting financial accounting standard of AOIFI? Whether they would be considered as non-Sharia compliant or half Sharia compliant, because if they are adopting Sharia standard and not adopting Sharia, relevant Sharia accounting standard, because many countries, they have not allowed financial accounting standard to be adopted because of IFRS. They are using IFRS.
Yes.
And second question, in many Islamic banks, especially in UAE, I don't know for other areas, but in UAE, non-Muslims are working on leading positions like head of operation, head of HR, head of finance, head of treasury, even CEOs. What is guidance from AOIFI on this corporate governance for Islamic banks, whether they should allow in the top leading position, then how Sharia governance or Sharia compliance will be ensured in presence of those non-Muslim leadership? Thank you.
You're most welcome. Okay, coming to your first question about financial accounting standard, FASS. As I mentioned at the beginning, we issue standards in 5 different areas. These are accounting, Sharia, governance, auditing, and ethics. And in different jurisdictions, the adoption level is different. يعني, for example, in Bahrain, Sharia standards are part of the law. In other countries, in Oman, they also follow our standards. In some countries, they use it as a guideline. And for that, if you allow me also, Maulana Sayyid, I can provide you with a copy of our 2023 footprint report, which basically lists which countries follow AAOIFI standard and which countries do not follow. But I understand your question is related to the implication. The impact is that it goes back to the main mandate of AAOIFI. What is our mandate? We want to harmonize the industry, we want to standardize the industry. So if certain countries have their own local laws, we don't have a say on this. We are not a regulator, but we present our standard to the regulator. Regarding your second question about the fit and proper criteria, right? So and having non-Muslims. To start with, the fit and proper criteria for the members of the Sharia Supervisory Board, of the members of the Central Sharia Board, and the head of internal audit and the head of Sharia audit, all of these are mentioned in our standards, and I explained some of them today. But when it comes to having non-Muslims, if you have the chance to read the newly issued exposure draft, we have identified being a Muslim, this is after long discussion, to be to be a condition of the member of the SSB. This was not a condition before, we were silent on this. But if you read the exposure draft of the Sharia Supervisory Board appointment and composition, which is the first ED after the governance framework, because we have 6 EDs. EDs, yani exposure draft, we issued them. We clearly say that the expert member should be a Muslim individual. And also we require having, good reputation in the market. So inshallah, this helps. Yani the matter that you have mentioned about the fact that the involvement of non-Muslims, I think this becomes an issue also when there is a window. So for the windows, there are also other specific considerations, and we have an exposure draft related to this. So I hope this answers even some of your questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Once again, we personally, I and on the behalf of management of Al-Sadiq Institute of Islamic Banking, Finance and Takaful, and on the behalf of our participants who are with us, I personally and on behalf of all of us really thank Ms. Zahra Jassim. She allotted her precious time for us and taught us these governance standards in such short span of time. So I will remember always that in 1 hour we studied almost 6 to 7 governance standards, inshallah. So I'm really thankful to you, and inshallah, as I mentioned, that this is not the last time. This is the daim, inshallah.
Allah.
So
Thank
say
you so
thank
much.
to all participants. I also uh, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh fi amanillah.
Fi amanillah.
Assalamu alaikum.